South Police District. I know a lot of you here in the audience tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming out. We're going to start things off here in a few moments. South District is well represented here tonight, so if you have any questions about specifically related to the South District, this isn't just a South District meeting. Chief Koval wants to talk about anything that's on your mind, but we have a lot of staff here tonight, and I'll introduce at some point all our different neighborhood officers, the community policing team, and even think our new mental health officers here tonight. So with that said, I'm going to turn the floor over to Chief Mike Koval, and I guess Captain Kristen Roman, you're going to say a few words for us.
I'm going to facilitate some explaining.
Okay, so Kristen's going to facilitate tonight. She'll explain that, and then Chief Koval. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. First of all, we had an item, a ring that was found outside, so if anybody's missing a ring, you can come up and identify it, and I'll hand it over to you. So we'll have it here, otherwise we'll turn it in at the end of the evening there. So I'm going to be facilitating tonight's discussion. What we have found at the various community forums that we've held is that in order to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to ask their question or make a comment or provide some feedback or a combination thereof, that it works best if we provide some sort of structure for that and a limit to the amount of time that people have to do that. So what we've landed on is a 2-minute limit, and the chief has, we've employed here a visual aid to help you, because I'll be out there with a microphone coming to you with the microphone when it's your turn to ask the question or make a comment. So if you'll pay attention as you can to that, we'll work it out somehow, but we'll be keeping track of the time there. And of course, I'll be trying to call on people to spread it out so that if you have a follow-up question, we'll allow some of those, but we're going to try to, again, make as many rounds as we can, and if we don't have a lot of questions, we'll circle back to those of you who might have more than one question to put out there. So just to kind of help you with the visual on the 2 minutes, basically it'll start at green, it goes to yellow after 1 minute. After 1 minute and 30 seconds, it'll switch to red, so don't let that surprise you. Red does not actually mean stop right away. It means you have another 30 seconds, and then we'll wrap up with that. And of course, we'll try to build in a little time there. You don't have to stop mid-sentence if we're toward the end there. So with that, I will hand it over to the chief.
One more thing real quick. One thing I forgot to mention. Ricardo, you want to stand up? We have Ricardo Franco here tonight. Ricardo is a South District officer who is bilingual. He speaks Spanish from our Beagles and Zool program, and he's here to translate for any of our Latino friends that are here in the audience tonight.
Good.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, my next words are going to be in Spanish for the Hispanic Latino people that are here present. Buenas noches, soy el oficial Ricardo Franco de Amigos en Azul para los que hablan español. Estoy aquí por si tienen alguna pregunta en español, no duden en hacerla. Yo voy a facilitar la traducción para las preguntas para el jefe, y cualquier cosa que se les ocurra o un comentario también, bienvenidos. ¿Ok? Gracias.
Oh, that's fine. So, without further ado, thank you for coming out when it's as cold as it is. This is the final segment for this quarter's community forums. Finished last night at North, and so South is the last at our stop. And then we anticipate doing more for the next quarter as well, sometime after May. So, with that, I'll let Captain Roman start us off.
Okay, for those of you standing by choice, that's great, but there are some seats up front. If people in the back are looking for a seat, you can come on up. Who would like to kick things off? Anyone? Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Julia, I am in the neighborhood, and I was unpleasant staying in Dade County for all 4 months last year with a friend. And I noticed that really wasn't like a lot of programs like rehabilitation and things like AA and sometimes I said pretty well.
Can't hear you. Can you speak up to the mic?
Right off.
It's working, but it's not very loud, so I don't know if you can turn it up.
Well,
Otherwise,
it's not
loud
working.
later.
Can you hear them?
I can't hear it.
Better go into the
There is a pause.
You're a psycho.
Okay. Well, basically, I just came to make a proposed solution. I can leave you with Koval. This is a family friend of mine, Linda. She developed a software program that basically helps people figure out like their cognitive learning ways and basically kind of helps like people figure out what they want to do, like how they learn and what careers and things like would better suit them. And we're thinking we could integrate that as a program into the county as some sort of like rehab program.
Well, again, in terms of the sort of the sovereignties of two political entities, it sounds like that's some programming that would be very erstwhile to be trying in our Dane County Jail for those who are awaiting or doing their sentence commitment. And we can certainly pass that on to Sheriff Mahoney for his attention or whatever, because obviously they are charged or entrusted with the care, custody, control, and the upkeep of those inmates that are assigned to the jail. But I think that kind of programming is very helpful. And we all learn as continuing learners in different ways. Some are very kinesthetic, some are very verbal. Just depends, but I think that's just another tool. We'll pass that on to Sheriff Mahoney's office.
Hi. Okay, I'm Linda, and I'm a former school superintendent, and we've been trying to build people.
All right.
And we've been doing it in corrections and teaching a class. And Julie's here. Julie wants to teach this class. She's been in jail. She knows what it's about. She knows people. She knows how to reach those people. By 5th grade, we turn off kids. We turn off 15% of the kids in this state of Wisconsin. 130,000 people we lose every year. In this class, I've been to Sheriff Mahoney. He thinks it's great. I was to the former police chief. He thinks it's great. I've been to the county exec. He thinks it's great. Lots of talk, no action.
Again, I just have to reiterate, the Madison Police is not in charge of the incarcerated inmates for the county of Dane. That is what it is.
Next question.
Good evening. This is the first time that I come to one of these meetings. I don't know what this meeting is about. Can you explain us a little bit more? Because for me, this is the first time, and it looks like you already know what you are talking about, and I'm like in the middle of nowhere. Thank you.
Okay. Well, since I became chief last April, I pledged that once a quarter, I would at a minimum go at least once to each of the district stations. We have 5 currently in Madison, and use that as an opportunity for people to communicate directly to me without using any sort of a web page or filters or going through the chain of command. And in that sense, it's helpful for me to sort of hear very visceral reactions from people, what their concerns, what their criticisms are, their suggestions for improvements or system improvements. And it also is an opportunity to look at those issues that are unique to the district that I'm in today. So that's why I typically have neighborhood officers or the captain or the command staff from those districts to specifically address those issues that are coming up unique to the South District as it would happen today, but it doesn't have to be limited to that.
Good evening. I'm Linda Hoskin, and I am a community activist. And I'm here to say I hope you're still planning to put police officers, neighborhood officers back into the neighborhoods. It has worked in the past, and it can't work now. Because we should not have to wake up and hear about a shooting. Because when there are neighborhood office and the officers in the office, it's a good communication, concern, care, and cooperation for the community. So that's all I have to say right now.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'd say that actually your comments have been echoed in most of the forums that I've gone to, that folks who have come out have said that, in fact, they really like the Neighborhood Police Officer Initiative. that it's an opportunity to get to know that officer that's assigned in a much more humanistic way, go beyond sort of the uniform. And I should say that those officers who decide to take the pledge of being a neighborhood officer commit to doing so for 4 years. Most of them have 4 years or so. You can get an extension, I guess. But the main thing is that those folks have seniority that could make them go just about any shift that they want, any district they want, but they really want to be impactful by being assigned full-time as the face of the Madison Police Department to that neighborhood. And the beauty of it is that, unlike a patrol officer assigned, is that they're not so driven by time constraints with calls in queue that have to be serviced one after the another. So even though our officers do a good job of connecting, this is an opportunity to do so in a much more qualitative way over a sustained period of time. And you don't just deal with issues of crime, they can also deal with quality of life issues, with landlords that aren't up to code, with students that need some extra help or some mentoring after school. Sometimes it's coaching a team, and sometimes, depending on the neighborhood, it might even be establishing a community garden. There are no rules in terms of what happens. And I also wanted to sort of point out with the neighborhood question is that we hope that neighborhoods get to a point of self-fulfillment and self-maintenance. And once they reach that threshold, we pull out. We did so at Magnolia Cypress, we did so on Broadway Simpson, we did so on Williamson Street, we're doing so on Wexford, we've done so on West Wilson, West Mifflin. We will go only until such time as the neighborhood, in fact, can show its capacity to take care of itself. That's the whole deal. We don't want to be invested. There's 120 neighborhoods currently registered in the city of Madison, and we have neighborhood officers assigned to 15.
Hi, my name is Isidore Knox, and I've lived in this neighborhood probably since 1990. Did want to say a few things. One, certainly as a resident of the South Side, we definitely want the police to service our community. It's really important in terms of servicing our community and making sure that we're safe. Most people know I help coordinate the Southside Raiders in Penn Park, and there's been many of the residents that have sat down and worked well with the South District Police to try to make that a safe environment for kids. And we have Penn Park Partners as a group that we work for years to keep maintaining positive activities in Penn Park so it doesn't become a place for gangs and drugs. And so we really work with the neighborhood officer, Mike. Mike is actually one of our coaches, so he's volunteered to get more involved with the kids in the community. And I've had negative experiences with the police too. I'll say that, more than once. I've also had positive experiences with the police too. So I think it's important that we work with the police department. For years we've sat down and had discussions with the police about the changes in our neighborhood and the expected response. So I think if I have some suggestions, they're this. One, I think we got to make sure we continue to make sure that officers are trained in implicit bias, and I know the MPD is. We also have to focus on procedural justice, which really is talking about not what the police does, but how they do it. And make sure that they're doing it in a respectful way, that they're explaining to people why they're requesting what they're requesting, so that they can respond in a more appropriate way. I also think that it's not just the MPD. We have to make sure all the law enforcement agencies around, like Fitchburg and other areas in Dane County, are similarly trained. And then finally it gets to the community. You know, we have to make sure we know what our rights and responsibilities are when we're responding to the police, exercise those rights once we know them, and make sure we're responding in a way that will minimize, confusion and problems. And so we want want to continue that relationship, continue that discussion, and make sure that we're part of the equation and make our neighborhood safe.
Thank you for your comments, and Raiders football are a dynastic icon of football and youth football.
All power to the people. All power to the people. All power to the people. I just want to thank everybody for coming out, including Chief Koval. Thank you for hosting the forum. We appreciate that. I just want to say, before I lead to my question, I think there's some misunderstanding and misconfusion about policing, because you guys are making it sound all fluffy and nice. Like, oh, the police are awesome. They come in our neighborhoods and they do all these positive things. But there's a lot of people who live in a different reality than a lot of us. When we drive a certain car, or we have titles behind us, or we live in the mayor, work in the mayor's office, we have a different experience just by default with police officers, or we have certain education, we have different experience with police officers just by default. So I just want to say, when we have a arrest rate of 8 to 1, that is directly reflected by our officers' discretion. You guys have a lot of discretion to determine who you're going to arrest, what you're going to arrest them for, and how you're going to arrest them. And black people, brown people, again, is arrested at a rate to 8 to 1. So who is responsible for that? Who's accountable for that? Who is going to be held accountable for that? We cannot address the racial disparities by adding police to our neighborhoods. It'd be nice to have a police officer that everybody know and can develop a relationship, but when you have over-policing, I'm gonna say that, over-policing of a neighborhood, you increase the likelihood that someone looking like me will be arrested, profiled, harassed. I live on the south side. I've been living over here for about 6-7 years now. Favorite neighborhood, so many black, brown, yellow people in this neighborhood. Diversity rocks. I'm not leaving this neighborhood. Now, one time I have felt unsafe. I've never felt like someone's gonna shoot me, rape me, kill me, rob me, none of that. There are isolated incidents anywhere. White people shoot each other. They do. And we don't see you adding police to their neighborhoods. So the question really becomes, how do we get equity in policing? And why is it that we as a society, as a city, as a community, have accepted the normacy that it's okay to place more officers in people of color neighborhoods? Now, I understand that we would like to develop relationships, but there is a disconnect between policing and a relationship. You treat us and talk to us at us like we're nothing. You assume that everyone's gang involved and related because they sag their pants, because they wear dreads, because there's a guy here, my guy, he's here with red dreads. You would never think that this brother is an activist. When you see him or your police pull him over, you assume that he's gang related. He got red tips, red jacket. He fits your description of what a gang person will look like. So my question is to you, how do you address not just the conditioned bias of our society, but the rawness of our reality, which is most white people and most people working in systems are conditioned to think less of us and to assume that we are inferior, which leads to arrest at an 8 to 1. And I just want to say that no training, no checkbox training is going to deal with the psyche that comes along with being white or being in control or in power in your uniform. It just doesn't happen. You are innately conditioned to think of us, and that's not by your fault. It's not a personal thing. This is a structural, systematic thing. So unless we give power to our neighborhoods and communities, we will still suffer at the hands of your system. And again, this isn't personal. We're asking that power be put back into our communities, that our communities are held accountable, that we're allowed to self-determine, that we set up neighborhood watch and advocates and hood ambassadors. Did you hear me? Hood ambassadors. We do not need you to do a job that we can do for ourselves. You give us the resource and opportunity, we can get it done. Thank you.
Not there.
Wow.
All right. Passion's there, and that's perfectly all right. With that 8 to 1 ratio, reflective actually going back to the Chronicle, the racial disparities report that serves as a crowning beacon for all of us, including the police, to reflect on what all of our roles are with respect to the infrastructure that has led to this sort of terrible statistical compilation. My suggestion, though, is that when we look at where policing is occurring, where these adverse contacts, the most consequential contacts, typically are between 17 to 26-year-olds. okay? When we look at those places where 17 to 26-year-olds, predominantly those folks of color, we don't see that the neighborhoods make the top 10. They don't even make the top 25. I had the numbers run from January 1st through August 31st of this last year. The reason I stopped at the school year is because Jennifer Cheatham, the school superintendent, is now creating a new paradigm, the BEP program, the Behavioral Education Plan, which has even less involvement of our officers in a formalistic way. So I didn't want to jaundice those figures with the new school year and her opportunity to roll out a new program. So when we looked at this, we saw the top 10 places where folks are arrested, the 17 to 26-year-old category, is frankly Easttown and Westtown Mall, okay? The east and west transfer points, exactly, and the 4 high schools, and the east and far west Walmarts. Not the neighborhood. And I can tell you that out of those top 10, although I would love most people to have the sense or impression, because most people feel good about us being sort of omnipotent and everywhere, the fact of the matter is, in those top 10 spots, the likelihood of our officers stumbling upon a crime in progress on site proactively are negligible. Most of the instances of those incidents are called in by a bus driver, the principal, a vendor, someone in the food court, a host of people, but it's a third-party initiated call to 911. Then, once we arrive, yes, in fact, then we have to find, is there an articulable basis based on specific facts that reach a legal threshold of probable cause if we're talking about a criminal arrest? And if in fact that's unsupported by those facts, then we can't make the arrest. You can't draft that citation. It won't flow, it'll be just dismissed. What I'm suggesting is that when we looked at those same individuals, looked at the face of those citations, and in fact looked at the covers of the booking logs, we can make attribution to something that you did suggest. When we look at those folks, we see that they are predominantly living in our most challenged neighborhoods. So I'm not dismissive of the fact that there can be an impression made that folks who are living in the neighborhoods, our challenged neighborhoods, are being over-policed, but it's not happening in the context of in the neighborhoods. In the neighborhoods, you have neighborhood officers who work 6 days a week, and they have an 8-hour shift, and then they are supplemented only by patrol and by perhaps an initiative by one of the community policing teams. We're just not there in the sort of abundance that is suggested. Let me just ask if you can just tell me, from the standpoint of a typical night, how many cops are on the south side working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.? For the whole south side? 4.
Everybody's sleeping.
Okay, let's do it from 3 to 11 right now while we're living. How many cops are on right now, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m.? Do you have a roster? What do you think?
No, but it's about 7.
7? Okay, because this is our highest time of day. Usually 2 to 10, 3 to 11.
And describe our South District boundaries go all the way out to the Speedway,
West High
hospitals, Glenway Golf Course, down Monroe Street, in on Region, everything south of Region, all the way over to Monona, all the way down to the Beltline and Fitchburg. So we have a pretty large geographic area that the South District encompasses.
And quite frankly, because it's a large area and there's a lot of calls for service throughout the city, probably at any given time, you'll find that we're being dispatched or doing on-site things for an incident of domestic violence. That usually ties up 2 officers. I'm looking at Captain Roman. There may be an issue dealing with a mental health person that has some sort of an episodic breakdown of sorts. That's going to take 2 officers. And if we count the fact that they go on an involuntary commitment order, then they have to be conveyed all the way to Oshkosh and back. So that's a 5-hour round trip. So there's a lot of variables that, frankly, if I had double the workforce I have, good luck with that in a budget like mine. But if I did have that luxury, we still couldn't possibly field enough officers to deal with the volume of calls for service that you're seeing. We just can't be in every place at all the time. To your other issue though, we do have to pony up to the fact that we have a role. And I think you made a mention of it, the training. The state requires 520 hours. We do over 800. And a lot of that is dealing with issues that frankly aren't on the grid for the state of Wisconsin peace officer certification. We're doing unconscious bias training. We're doing training with crisis intervention techniques that also deal with professional communication. We're always trying to infuse cultural competency issues, bringing in people from the community. And at the end of the day, I think that we're also open to enlarging that curriculum. For the last 3 years when I was in training, we had a professor from UW Law School come in and talk to our officers for 4 hours about Project Innocence and all those people that have been wrongfully convicted, sent to prison, and many of that was on the strength of misidentification and how did the police play a role in that in terms of being unduly suggestive and how those lineups were arranged. So we do want to be sensitive to that, but I'd also say that Madison's issue, I hope we all understand, I think we can all agree, go way beyond the pale of what the police are or aren't doing. We are a tale of two cities increasingly, the haves and the have-nots, and that dichotomy is becoming increasingly pronounced. And so when you put together sort of the perfect storm elements of abject poverty, and couple that with, quite frankly, an educational system that is failing a lot of our youth, more joblessness, more hopelessness, more helplessness, that creates issues, and it also creates habitability and geographic density. People are all migrating to those neighborhoods where they can find housing that they can afford, and we're putting people stacked upon people in some areas that are target rich for them problems. So we will continue to identify those rogues that may be wearing the Madison police officer who aren't worthy of it, and we'll run them right out of Dodge. But I'd also say that we're also going to have to look at what are those things that we do systemically that may unwittingly contribute to a de facto sense of what you've alleged. And I can't dispute it. We have to look at those. We have to look at alternatives to the default mechanism of ticket or arrest. I couldn't agree more with that.
Right, I have 5 in the queue, so until we get further in, I'm not going to be able to stack them up in my memory.
So my name is M, and I'm also with the Young Gifted and Black Coalition.
YGB!
And I live on the South Side, and I've lived here nearly a decade. And we did write an open letter to the chief expressing many of the concerns of the people who are arrested at 8 to 1. And so to be clear, that's the perspective that I'm speaking from. I do not have class privilege, race privilege, gender privilege, sexuality privilege, and a number of other privileges. So that is the place that I'm speaking for. And it was very disappointing to see the response that, in a sense, trivialized the experience of over or mass incarceration of black people and the brave, historic experience of black people in this country when it relates to police repression and police violence. So, in an attempt to address that, a couple things. So one, there could be 6 officers or 6 patrol cars on the South Side between 3 to 11. I don't know if I'm misquoting, but let's say that is the number. So if they're covering that broad range, the question is, where are they spending the most of their time?
Yes.
I live right off of Park and Buick, and if I stand out there for 20 minutes, I am bound to see 1 or 2 police cars circle by. I doubt that continuous circling is happening in Fitchburg or in other areas, similar to the East Side community. If we were on the East Side community, how many of those officers would be circling and standing and posting on Jennifer Street, Williamson Street, or how many of them would be on Darbo? So how do you account for, monitor, or check for disparate patrolling? So if there are 6 officers, where are they spending their time? What neighborhoods? How many times did they circle this block? Did they stop? Did they blink? How many people did they come in contact with? What was the race of those people? How are you all tracking that information? Because it's not just the number of police, and also, really quickly, and also to address a lot of what's happening, how and what are you all going to do to develop a mechanism of community control over police? What is happening is that my community is being gravely impacted by structural racism, which we all acknowledge, but we have no power in addressing the issue. And if everything is fine and dandy, then take it to a vote and nothing to change. But if something is wrong, there's going to be a huge change as a result of the vote. And I think if you are here to serve us, we should have the power to hire, fire, train, or do whatever it is that we want to do.
Whoa, come on now!
I never for a minute would have occasioned or tried to insinuate anything less than the historical implications of race and the terrible track record police has done historically. And if I conveyed that impression, I do apologize. That was not my intent. In terms of where the police are at any given time, frankly, they're going to gravitate to where there's a lot of calls for service, for one. That is one of the things that drive us. And frankly, the predicate that you lay in that people don't want to see the police in their neighborhood is contrary to what I'm hearing at other forums in and around the city, including the South Side, in the sense that I have a lot of people that say, we like seeing the police, it gives us a sense of well-being, we like the fact that you're there, you're visible, we like that kind of a profile. And the other thing that always seems to come up is the context between people of color and the police. Frankly, the context in and of itself should not imply that those are all adversarial or negative. A lot of the contacts that our neighborhood officers are making are literally attempts to be authentic, to be genuine, to be more relational, to get a better insight in what's going on with their constituents for whom they're entrusted to take care of and to help work with. So there's some things there that are heavily laden in terms of the connotation you invest with it that I guess I'm going to have to agree to disagree with you on, but I thank you for your comment.
You were in my queue.
Hi, my name is Sherry Vester, and I've lived here in Madison, Wisconsin since 1980. I've lived on the university campus, and I've lived here on the South Side. This is my husband, James, and I have 6 children, and they're all getting ready to be, well, my last child will be home and to be adults, and I plan to move from Madison. I've had I thank God that I'm here today, and I thank the police department for all the wonderful things that you have done to keep my family safe. And I've had good experiences with the police, and I've had horrible experiences with the police. And I've had, in every relationship in life, from my family to jobs to, I've had good and bad experiences, but I've had more positive experiences with the police. And my husband did save a life and won a Lifesavers Award, and that was a wonderful banquet. I've met all different races of police here, but I do agree with Isidore, Brother Isidore Knox, that I think there's a responsibility all around for everyone. And I would like to see the police continue to work. And I agree with almost everybody in the room with different points, but I have different opinions, and I respect other opinions and other life experience of others, but I've had, different life experience, different opinions. And I'm just glad that everybody's sitting down and talking to each other, everybody being truthful. And I just have had very wonderful experiences and bad experiences in almost every different areas of my life, but I just think that love is the answer, and honest communication. And anger has never helped me, but I have been young and angry before, but it never helped me. But love and communication and pulling out the best and the strengths in each other has helped me more in my own family and in all my experiences. But I thank the police department, and I thank God, and I thank the young people and just everybody that's here. I'm glad everybody's sitting down and talking.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex Shabazz. Grew up, born and raised Madison, Wisconsin. Lived on the west side a good part of my life, and then the rest of my adult life I've lived on the south side. And I just want to talk a little bit about my experience. Well, before I get into that, I just want to kind of respond to what Chief Koval, you talked about where the arrests are happening and who's being arrested and for what crimes. we didn't really talk about that, but you said that most people are not arrested in these neighborhoods, right? You call them problem neighborhoods or challenging neighborhoods. And I'm just wondering, these places where you say the most arrests happen, why are they not policed in the same way that the South Side is? You talked about the hospital. Why don't you have a police on every floor, right? Those are the people that are most vulnerable, right? But that you see how ridiculous that sounds. And I want to say, if folks are calling the police in other places, then why are they on the South Side? Why are they on the South Side so heavily? And yes, like Em talked about, I don't want to get into a numbers game with you because I feel like you guys are really, really good at spinning that. But the problem with the people are saying, with those that are most impacted by police violence are saying, is that we don't see the police as something that's to serve us. We see it as somebody that is conquering or invading our communities. We don't feel safe. In fact, I was very triggered walking in this place, almost threw up because of my experiences, violent experiences with the police. That's why you don't hear in the forums what people are really thinking, because chances are they probably were extremely triggered and couldn't even walk in that space. And I just want to talk about, I have a question for you. So much to say. What do you say to the chief of police, right? So I have a friend, her name is Sarah. She lives on Willie Street. She lives on Willie Street. But basically she said like she's seen the police in her neighborhood like 1 to 2 times. I can stand outside my door, I can walk to the gas station, and I'll see the police at least 6 to 7 times. Now, whether or not this is the same police that's just circling around, I don't really care. The point is that obviously we're being more police. I don't want to get into a game of semantics. This is what the people feel. And if this is about democracy, why not listen to what the people say, right? If those that are most impacted by these overwhelming arrest rates, if they are saying we want less police in our neighborhoods, we want to be able to control the style of policing in our neighborhoods, why don't you listen?
Take it to a vote.
As a constitutional officer of the court, I took a pledge, a vow, that we would respect all the constitutional precepts, constitutional safeguards, and individual liberties. And that means, in fact, providing equal protections for all of our citizens as well. So unless or until there is such time as there is some mechanism to legislate where the police will go, we will continue to be in these neighborhoods. We can continue to argue and to improve the quality, the type, and the style of policing. That's always a fair game for criticism, but in terms of our abandoning whole neighborhoods, that's out of the question. With respect to the areas where you say, why aren't we in those areas? Well, when it comes to the hubs, you probably will see uniformed officers there frequently, along with a lot of public cameras that are used to monitor the activities there. In terms of Easttown and Westtown malls, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for the city of Madison tax base to subsidize private retail when they have their own security forces. If they want the Madison cops, they've had to learn that they have to pay for those in an off-duty capacity. The schools, each high school has one educational resource officer, and under the BEP program, those officers are not going to be the first call and the first option, because the schools and the police are partnering to look at alternatives to formalized treatment of our students who are disruptive in the classrooms. We agreed with the school superintendent in that we want to cut down on suspensions, we want to cut down on expulsions, we want to see higher scores, we want to see higher graduation rates, and the only way you get to achieve that is if kids get staying in school more often. We don't want to pull them out. So that's why I'm saying I think that with BEP and the school superintendent and with our officers, who have extremely great relational skills at the high schools, I think that we're turning corners in some of these venues.
I got several queued up here, so.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? I thank y'all for being here. My name is Jafar Banda. I traveled here from Milwaukee County just to listen to the South District talk about the racial issues and the stereotyping they've been experiencing. That's all I've been hearing for the last few hours I've been here. And I would like to know, Chief Mike, if you can help us put all this racial profile in the back seat. I know that's a lot on your hands, and the community's willing to work with you. We have a multicultural community, and we would like a multicultural law enforcement. We would like to see more cops in our community that are multicultural descendants. We would like to see more minority officers. Where are the Native American Indian officers? Where are the Hispanic officers? Where are the African American officers? You want to give us more police in our communities, give us more black cops. And I also support the streets ambassadors. Let the community leaders and the neighborhood watch members police the community, since they have a better relationship with the community than the police.
Thanks for making the trip. We're all for any kinds of collective neighborhood watch, neighborhood supports. It's great when neighbors get to know each other. It can be my brother's keeper, my sister's keeper. We're all for that. Any kinds of galvanized action like that is helpful because, as you stated, when a community takes care of itself, there's less need for the formalism of police. I get that, and I grant you that. In terms of looking at the demographics of my department, though, in terms of women, the national average across the board, federal, state, county, local, is 12%, and Madison has 30%. We're among the nation's leaders. Our community together has around 20% people of color. My department matches that and exceeds it in some categories. In terms of which officers decide to go where, some officers do choose to work in the South Side and is in the neighborhood capacity, but they also have proprietary rights called seniority. They're a union shop. They use their seniority to go where they will to suit their needs and that of their family. But I don't really think that the lack of diversity is one of the issues that's plaguing Madison per se in terms of our workforce. Obviously, could we be doing better? Certainly. Do we want to do better? Absolutely. Thank you.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
My name is Eric Upchurch. I am part of the circle of leaders called Young, Gifted, and Black. Thank you all for coming out. I do wish that there were more people of color, more black people at this forum, because black people are of the most impacted by the racial disparities that are perpetuated in part by the Madison Police Department. What I want to say here is that we're living in a situation in a society where we have a bad habit of having bad habits. And there's this thinking that if we continue to do the things that we've been doing, we may solve the problems that we have helped to cause. And that is counterintuitive to me. You mentioned that there are troubled areas, and these arrests are coming from people that live in those troubled areas. My issue with that is that you continue to arrest people from these areas, but it's the areas that are troubled. So it's like a Band-Aid. You're putting a Band-Aid on a much more serious and deep wound. So the arrests if you did the research on these troubled areas, you would see that arrests do not help those troubled areas very much. And being jailed in a city where we represent 6% of the population and 49% of the jails, you can see how that can perpetuate the trouble in those areas that I call home. So you mentioned also that the issues span beyond the police. So my thinking with that is that how can an issue that spans beyond the police be solved with police involvement? It's kind of like the pill that you take that gives you side effects to have to take more and more pills. So yeah, that's something to think about. How are you approaching the solutions that you purport to be aiming toward? You're dealing with generational traumas. You heard from my colleague here, Alex Shabazz, that just the sight of the police invoked physical and mental reaction. So take that into account when you're dealing with people that have generational traumas of the origins of the police and the eras of Jim Crow and convict leasing, where propaganda was put forth to make us hate ourselves and to make society hate us. Your parents and your parents' parents had the belief that we were undeserving people, and that innately they passed that down to you in a way such that you were able to say to me in your last community forum on the west side at Sequoia Library that there may be implicit biases going on. Somebody, thank you very much, someone who, coming from a background of meditation, I know forthright that it takes years and years of dedicated training to be able to peer through the depths of your mind to even see a hint of the type of biases that might be hiding there. So take that into account. Lastly, it seems like with these implicit biases, your solution has been to increase police presence, to increase police activity, increase police resources. And what you're doing is, it's like holding a magnifying glass to a wound, to somebody that is sick and to somebody that is dying. And you're putting more and more resources into this magnifying glass without actually addressing the problem that you're experiencing. So you see more of that problem, and then you begin to perpetuate that problem more and more because you react to that problem. So lastly, why are more officers here? I've been at most of the police forums. I have not seen this many officers. Now, you mentioned before in your letter that the rallies of the Young, Gifted, and Black Coalition were causing an overbearance on the resources that the MPD had. But I see here that there are many officers that are on duty and I assume being paid, unless you all are volunteers at this. I don't know. Andre Lewis, what do you say? Are you getting paid right now? Okay, absolutely. What about Molly Thompson? What about
Mr. Upchurch, we have a decorum on the time.
So there's a difference here.
Could we have some decorum?
Now, will you support, and this is my last question, I promise, and I'm going to give this mic over. The reason why you see me holding this mic right here is because I do not have the power to have this voice in any other setting. So the things that I need to say need to be said, and not just for me, but for the people that also share the same traumas and decided not to come here. This is their voice. So with that, Police Chief Mike Koval, if what you are doing is indeed warranted by the people, then will you support a community accountability board that is chosen by that community, for that community, that will have the ability and the power to hold the Madison Police Department and its practices accountable? Thank you. All power to the people. All power to the people!
So, a couple of things here. One of the things, the tenets of Sir Robert Peel, who was the sort of our founder of formalized policing as we know it today in the modern era, said the police are the community are the police. So when there are forums like this, I actually encourage my officers to engage and to be available and to be present, because I don't want them to be seen always in sort of a reactionary mode dealing to crisis. I want you to see that there are real women and men who make selfless sacrifices each and every day to keep our communities safer, to enhance the quality of life for all of our communities. I don't think anybody took this job with the thought or with the notion of how can I be more oppressive to my fellow man or woman. I think when you start your day as these guys do, and as I do, there's something a little different about those who would gravitate towards selfless service when the first item that you put on when you get out of the shower is a bulletproof vest. There's something noble about those who would put themselves in harm's way for a complete stranger. And while I have nothing but respect for your opinion, I do feel that you are disrespecting 455 people with these grandiose, over-the-top statements
They disrespected my
which
community.
predicate that all of us are cut from the same cloth and are unfeeling, uncaring, and are not invested in our neighborhoods. So, I'm sorry to hear that.
For some of you who came in late, there are some seats that appear to be opening up here, so if there's folks staying in the hallway and you would like to come on in, there are some seats here. Also for those latecomers and for a reminder of those here, we do have the time limit for a reason, and we ask that the only way this works or any democracy works is if we all follow the rules. So please be observant of the 2-minute limit. I've tried to let people finish their thoughts or sentences within reason, but we are needing to stay to that. I have several people with their hands up that are waiting in the queue, so I'm going to move on to the
Can I
next.
say one, thank you for the job you do. I appreciate it.
How you doing? My name is Mike Franklin. It's good to see everybody here. In 2 minutes, I'm gonna. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, sir.
I'm going to rattle off four different thoughts.
If you got a pen, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, you got a good team here. They can all take 2 each.
Okay.
The first is it is encouraging that police departments are trying to identify officers who are multiculturally incompetent, racially, cross-culturally incompetent. So one thing I'd like you to speak to the city about is, and you can go race by race, but in general, particularly for officers that may be Irish, Dutch, a number of different European ethnicities that are all racially classified as white. What has been the process or practice or protocol for you when you can identify a multiculturally or cross-culturally incompetent white police officer? And how often has that happened? How is it for amongst the team? How do you work with the team when they have identified, much like I say a football analogy, if a head coach can say to a football player sometimes, you know you got a problem with so-and-so in that locker room and blah, 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 blah. I'm giving you the leeway, don't do anything you ain't supposed to, but go handle it. What are your practices culturally to encourage officers to not allow multiculturally and cross-culturally incompetent behavior to continue on the job? Second is, with respect to the challenge that President Obama gave the nation in terms of community policing, after the non-verdicts came down, there were 4 specific derivatives that came out from the, I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. And the one that keeps coming up here is community policing. And I've heard some really good ideas, and I know that the city has taken some steps with that because I talked to John, who's over the youth courts, and etc. So I know some things are happening, and I think that information exchange will be valuable. But the bottom line is, Obama laid out federal guidelines for how to engage. What does it look like in practice for you to take those federal guidelines and make them local, to have local versions of each? And then the final is, how can you implement those things given the budgets, given the budget situations that you're dealing with? And then lastly, and most importantly, a lot of the stuff that has happened last year happened because of the shooting of unarmed, or the murder of unarmed people.
Right.
I would like for you to speak about what the reality looks like in law and policy for your officers to find it against policy and against the law to shoot somebody to death who they suspect is unarmed. How can that be a law or policy?
Okay.
Great questions.
With respect to the first one, Michael, let's see here now. You have to create a strong foundation from within the culture to know whether there's somebody that's a bad egg amidst us. What we have seen across the country, and it is a predicate that you have correctly identified, there is in some shops, some cultures, some police departments, a sort of blue code of conduct, of silence, where there is a reticence to come forward, to inform on another cop who's acting badly, misbehaving. I think that because we have a diverse workforce with a very eclectic background, my average entering age is 29. They all have, literally all have bachelor's degrees, a quarter of them have master's degrees, and they're not all criminal justice. They run the gamut. So they come to us from some very different life and worldly experiences. Many of them have a second language, intrepid travelers, and they're never really been to the point where they're willing to go with the sort of the paramilitary norm that we see played in so many academies across the country. We don't run it that way. So frankly, some of the most substantive policy violations and things that we've gotten, if you look at the country, a lot of the majority of those complaints that are sustained are from folks from outside making bona fide complaints against cops inside. For us, historically, that number has about equaled, if not more, from other cops informing on, uncomfortable with, not tolerating what they see happening or unfolding. So I think you have to look at the unique cultural attributes of what we're doing here. I remember the third part was the use of force issue. There's a federal mandate. It's basically called objective reasonableness, and an officer had better be able to articulate that at the time that they deploy deadly force, that there was in fact an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to themselves or to another person. If they can't articulate that, then they are going to be held culpable, both civilly and potentially criminally. Now, we haven't seen that narrative, have we? As we look at, Ferguson to New York, and who knows what we're going to see next with Cleveland. But the point of the matter is, it's the same federal standard, it's the same mandate that has to be applied universally across the country. And so we're not unlike that. But if in fact that person if the facts would reflect the fact that that person from beginning, middle, and end did nothing to create that overt threat of imminency, and they had nothing in their hands, that officer is in a world of hurt, because that can't be supported. And I think you asked me a question in the middle, Michael.
The other one was about Obama's mandates, four mandates.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. It goes to hiring, it goes to training, it goes to implicit bias. We're efforting to do that. We're trying to get to those stages in terms of who we're hiring, what the training mandate is. Are you covering unconscious bias or neutral and unfair and impartial policing? Incorporating more diversity into your workforce. I think that we're trying to hit on a lot of those cylinders and then some. I think his initiatives at looking at, these blue ribbon panels on 21st policing, where they're getting these luminaries from across the country to come out and provide those sort of insights, has been very helpful. It's been a good conversation, and I think we need to continue that. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you. I'm old enough to have a tremendous long period of watching police do what they damn please. One of the guys I went to high school with quit high school, got his folks' permission and joined the Marines. Got sent to and came back from Korea. And he's in Coney Island drunk on his ass in his dress uniforms, medals clear across his chest, medals everywhere, and two mounted New York cops got him between the horses and beat him over the head till they killed him. I never figured out what they thought he was guilty of. I suppose drunken in public. But Madison replicates that problem. It wasn't too long ago when a Latino man who was shackled, arms behind his back and legs together, was killed by the arresting officer. And the officer never faced any real sanctions. This goes on and on. Recently, Ferguson, Cleveland, where a 12 or 13-year-old kid with a toy gun is blown away by a cop in his cruiser. The question becomes, why should we pay any attention to anything we hear from people like the chief of police here, when he seems to feel threatened enough to have half a dozen uniformed officers to protect him from who? From us? All we want is peace. And what we get is assassination by agents of the government. It's called the criminal justice system. And the first time I noticed something was truly screwed up was when I began a 6.5-year session of pastoral visits to the state prison in Wisconsin. And when I got inside the walls of Wisconsin, I looked around and I scratched my head and I'm saying, what the fuck is this? There's afros everywhere. And it was my first glance at the incredible disparity. And I have heard nothing tonight that doesn't either support me on this or gives us hope that anybody in official position will do a damn thing about it.
Does anyone have our clipboard?
Clipboard, anybody?
So my name is Ezzy. I'm director of Adult Basic Education at the Literacy Network, and I'm a man. I'm a human. And part of, right. So part of being a man is why I said as you understand certain things as you mature. And one of the first things that you learn is self-accountability. Not once have I even thought tonight that anybody with these complaints about this team has asked themselves the one question: what am I doing? Look within your own self. How can you improve your own self so that there's not these problems? They're doing a great job. I mean, I'm from Beloit. I've been here for, I graduated from Whitewater, moved here the day on graduation. Have not had a problem. The reason why, you carry yourself in a certain way. If you are over-policed, if you are pulled over, be legit. Have a driver's license. Don't have certain things in your vehicle. Be, as my uncle would say, be a proper gentleman or a young lady. So it's not what the police think of me. It's not or thinking down on me. What do you think of yourself? What are you doing every day? So none of these problems are the result of what these guys are doing or not doing, because I think it's a great community, and a big part is because of this team. What are you doing? So there's a bunch of complaining. I went to my daughter's school the other day just to visit. I said, where are your gym shoes? Well, Mom said, why didn't you get the gym shoes? It's not Mom's fault. It's not Dad's fault. It's not your cousin's fault. No one's. But yours. You are accountable. She was late waking up. Just this morning. I said, why were you late waking up? Well, what time did your alarm clock go off? Where were you at? What were you doing? How far was the tablet away from your bed? Look within and appreciate the environment that Madison really is, because even my hometown right now, go down there and there's some issues. So Madison is a great place, man. I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud of you guys.
Andre and Marcus, get on either side of that guy and make sure he gets an application before I leave. Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Tina Usucha, and I have been here for almost 30 years. Being here for 30 years, I don't think anything is changing in this environment I am in. And I am from Africa. I haven't seen police except when I came to America. I have not seen any police before, because I said, who are these people? Who are these people? And they say, oh, they are the people that keep people right. So, I don't know what to say, but America has a lot of work to do. They have a lot of work to do with their people, with education. Actually, policing the community will not actually make any difference. It hasn't been. So it's you people that will know your people. I'm really ashamed that all these things are going for a country that polices the world. You understand what I'm saying? It's too bad. I don't know how you're gonna solve this problem, but it's far away that America will come, and because all other countries look at you as educator, people will look at. And then I'm seeing these people today, commenting on. I haven't seen so much police here. I'm afraid. Because when I go to my country, I don't see any police. I do not see any police. Not that they are not there. They are there. But, why should human beings be policed like animals? That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Now that I know what I'm doing here. My name is Lino, and I don't live in Madison, but I technically live because I work from 8 until midnight every day at El Pastor Mexican restaurant. I am the owner of it, and that's what I was invited to come over here. So,
thank you for what you do to the community.
My question is with the Hispanic community. I am a child cat because I am there talking to everybody every day, and I talk to the Hispanic community. Most of the people ask or comments that how the police stop them just because they don't have a driver's license. And we know the truth. More than 20,000 people in Madison or Dane County doesn't have a driver's license, not because we don't want, it's because of the law change. 5-10 years ago, most of the people who have it. But now we are just pulled over because we don't have a valid driver's license. And people have to drive their kids to school, they have to work, and this is a problem, not only a problem of the police, it's a problem of the community. So, do you profile the people? Do you read their license plate and say, hey, this doesn't have a driver's license? Because most of these people who have been pulled over, they didn't do anything wrong. They just were driving and were pulled over, and they asked the officer, and the officer said, do you know what I pulled over? And I say, no, because you don't have a valid driver's license. How do you know? That is my question. And I haven't heard that more than it used to be 4 or 5 years ago when the law changed. So I don't know if there was a profiling in the Hispanic community. I'm talking for most of the people. I say that 90% of the Hispanic people that I know have been pulled over with no reason. And I know that this is a law and the police has to follow the law, but a law that is unjust is not a law.
Thank you, sir. First of all, our department does not use LPR technology, which is license plate reading technology that some agencies have that can scan electronically and do a feed to a computer and instantaneously bring out those issues. We don't use LPR for our department. I know some of the neighboring communities are going to that technology. We have not. We do not profile. In order to make a traffic stop, somebody has to have an articulable basis based on a witnessed violation, whether it be an equipment violation, whether it be a moving violation, whether it be a registration violation, or if the night before you and I have contact, and in the course of that contact, maybe it was at a completely different noise disturbance, and we typically run people that we have contact with, and if I come to learn that, oh, well, this friend that I had here out at the park today doesn't have a driver's license, and then it's the next day and I see you driving a car, that would also provide the requisite legal burden for them to do a stop of you. I am working with a state senator out of Milwaukee. I am endorsing, and I've asked her to call me when she needs someone to be subpoenaed before testimony before the assembly. I am definitely backing a driver's ID card so that we can mitigate the very problem that you talked about. It would not qualify as authentic ID at the level or the equivalent of a passport, but it would meet the need that you've articulated in that people could go to school, go to their work, take care of their kids, and have a means of getting from point A to point B without looking at their rearview mirror, wondering if they're going to be pulled over. So those are the issues, such as they are, and we're going to continue to work on them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually told myself I wasn't going to say anything, but then I got in this room and I wondered, I see Madison police officers around here, am I in Madison? Because what I'm hearing is not what I see. I've been in Madison for 25 years. I've been the president of the local business association, and I active in my neighborhood. I actually think everybody in this room that wears a badge and a gun, thank you. Because they work for us, okay? We set the laws, we set the ordinances. They're out there doing a job that none of us are. So I don't think it's fair to sit here and take cheap shots against highly educated police officers and a highly educated police chief because of an agenda of people that have left the room. My neighbors, my citizens want the cops in the neighborhood, and to know that Captain Dallas only has 4 cops to work graveyard shift, that's crazy. Because when I call 911, I expect one to show up. So before we leave, let's thank these cops that probably are here on their own time or are not for doing the job to keep us safe.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'm nervous speaking into the microphone. My name is Eve, and I was born and raised here in Madison on the Near East Side. I don't think I ever saw a police officer growing up. And now I live about 2 miles from here, so this is my community, and I definitely want to speak up. I can't speak for the people who left the room, but I can speak to them that they had something else that they had to get to, and I just want to say that I support them, and I follow the lead of the Young, Gifted, and Black folks, and I'm white, and I'm doing my best to be an ally. And so I look to Black folks to provide that leadership and not speak for them, of course. So we have an 8-to-1 racial disparity in Dane County's arrest rates, and that is a structural problem. That's a structurally racist problem, and that means that we need structural answers and structural solutions. So I'd like to hear what you propose for those structural changes in order to dismantle racism.
A couple of things here. First that I think bears some discussion. First of all, with the ratios, I know that we are hearing an awful lot about the focus on who's being arrested, as we should. As we should. I'm not trying to minimize that at all. But I also feel that it's time that I spoke for victims. And what I'm talking about is that when you have a demographic base of 6% African Americans, and they account for 32% of those victimized, that too is out of whack, sideways, and disproportionate. And I want to remember our victims. Because when people say, why are you doing what you're doing, which offenses, which violations, which victims do you want to say, your case really doesn't matter as much as this case? Do you want us to just basically forfeit those people who have had property crimes committed? Burglaries, I think, are intensely invasive in terms of the property that's taken, but moreover the sanctity of the home that is also violated. Which crimes? If you give me a list and we can develop a consensus, we can have an adult dialogue about that. I think I actually started the dialogue by saying perhaps we should examine possessory drug crimes. I'm willing to go there. I don't see a lot of people coming with me. I don't see a lot of legislative support. It's not exactly vogue to be a police chief and have that kind of discussion. It's not because I'm afraid. So I just want to say that relative to the terms that are being bandied about here, the other thing is that yes, we're the gatekeepers to the criminal justice system. But a cop's word, their report, and their testimony in and of itself isn't going to be prosecuted if there's not probable cause. There's not going to be a conviction unless there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Those issues are beyond the pale of us as an intake to the system. So there's a lot of things going on here besides the police in the criminal justice system. I actually do have some profoundly hopeful news to report though tonight. Captain Ballas, many of his neighborhood officers are eagerly awaiting, probably around April, when we're going to be an active participant at a groundbreaking level of a restorative justice court right here in the South Side. It's a real pause for optimism. And I think what's profound about it is that for the first time we are trying to do a paradigm shift in how we deal with offenders and treating them differently than what's been the default mechanism by ticket, arrest, and onto the brick and mortar solution. That's what's encouraging. What will be happening is that literally the same group or the demographics that we described earlier, the 17 to 25-ish year old folks, if our officers here in the South Side find someone who's offended for the first time, a crime, normally, the normal traditional response is that there's probable cause to believe a crime was committed, probable cause that this person committed the crime, you effect the arrest. Well, we're going to detain the person based on that, and they're probably going to be given a court date on a piece of paper that tells them all this, and it'll be all recorded in an officer incident report. But in that interim period of time, if this is a first offender, we're going to be using members of the community that will do two things. One, they're going to make sure that victims understand that holistically that their needs are heard, the community's needs are heard. But moreover, they're going to look at this individual, be contacted by civilians who have the capacity to bring some wraparound services and say, what's the deal? What occasioned this? Was it because there was an alcohol issue on board? Were you high? How about, would you be receptive to an AODA assessment with some treatment modalities? Is it because you needed to steal because you needed to eat? Are you homeless? Let's work on securing a job. Let's work on getting your GED. Let's look at some options here because you didn't just decide to commit a crime typically randomly or impulsively. Something is predicating that. So then in 3 weeks' time, they come back. Where's it going to be? The Village or Mall?
The order will be the South District. Ron Johnson's office is at Central Hispano.
Ron Johnson will be at Central Hispano. He sort of moderates it. He's not a cop.
Dane County Human Services.
Dane County Human Services, thank you. And basically, the offender will be offered a choice. We are prepared to give you the kind of skills and tools that can help you help yourself. That's behind door number one. And if you decide that you don't want those services, which is your prerogative, or more importantly, you do not follow through on the community's sense of what's appropriate, well then, regrettably, we do have the default. We can do a booking sheet and we can go to jail. But if you participate, and I hope you do, and it's successful, for the first time, that individual is not going to even be entered into CCAP. They won't be labeled as ever having been arrested because we're looking at this. Now it's going to have to start with baby steps. But I'd like to think that after we deal with the first offender with some time and with some positive validation that it's working, we can expand it to the more benign property crimes, the simple thefts or things like that, for people who have a record. So you can look at it as we have sort of heard tonight, that it is a sad commentary and indictment on sort of a very abysmal statistic for our county, for our city. And I want to be clear, to the extent that the police are culpable as the gatekeepers to the system, I'm not trying to absolve us of anything. We have to own that which we create. But I'm suggesting that beyond the pale of what we're doing or not doing well enough are a lot of other issues and a lot of positive things that are happening. If I could bring with you each day, I get a stack like this from citizens who have emailed our website, called in and left a recorded message, all of whom are literally telling us about officers doing completely random acts of generosity, kindness, and compassion, and it would make your heart swell with pride because they are public servants in the truest sense of the word. But as is the nature of the human condition, it's much easier to default to that which is, frankly, inappropriate, shows wrongdoing, and puts the police in a bad light. I have said from the get-go that any group, whether it's dentists, doctors, lawyers, clergy, cops, I would suggest that probably 95% or better of any group you care to itemize, they are meeting and exceeding those standards which we as a society hold dear. And like any demographic group, we probably have that 3 to 5% for whom all the negativity can generate. And in some departments, the bigger ones, I do think that you have to be mindful that there is a pervasive, insidious culture of cops that take care of cops, and it's difficult to be relational when you're constantly protecting and defending your turf. I don't mean to be self-serving, but we have 455 officers of very, very diverse backgrounds, spread out over 5 districts, soon to be 6 districts, I hope. And the reality is that we don't have that sort of pervasive, insidious, cancerous culture here in Madison. We just don't. And I really, at the end of the day, at my age, I really don't care how the community defines my legacy, but I care deeply about the legacy that is the Madison Police Department that's been entrusted to my care. And I'm going to defend this department to the utmost because I love it, I believe in it, and I believe our mission and our values are spot on, and I'm unapologetic about that mission. We will continue to do better. We are 455 cops, and as the top cop in this group, I will be the first to say, I have feet of clay. I am going to make mistakes. There are things that I will not be proud of because perhaps an insensitive word or phrase, or perhaps I didn't understand, made the wrong decision, and I will own that at the end of the day. But I also think it's interesting that when I read, as I teach law classes to our academy, when I see the dynamics that lead to Supreme Court case holdings, where issues that are occurring dynamically in the middle of the night, and officers are, with little or no backup, are being asked to make compelling decisions in a heartbeat, are then litigated for years through dozens of courts and just as many law clerks and judges who have the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, and I say, you know what? The real practitioners that bring the law to fruition are the officers in the field that have to make these difficult decisions. So, it may not be the message that everybody heard, and some will view me as nothing but a spin doctor. That's your prerogative, but I'm very proud of the Madison Police Department.
You didn't answer the
question.
We're not leaving any neighborhoods. You didn't answer the question.
Which question is that?
What are you going to do about the systemic racism that starts with the Madison Police Department?
Ms. Conkle.
That's after people have been arrested. That's after people are in the system.
Throughout the day, I've tried to identify the fact that neighborhood officers are trying to be relational and to be preemptive and collaborative with social workers, with Dane County Social Services, with school districts, with mental health practitioners. We're trying to avoid the brick and mortar solution. We're trying to be preemptive so that we don't have to introduce it. Pardon?
Then why aren't you?
We are trying. We are making that attempt every day.
Are you responsible for the 8-to-1 incarceration rate? Are you responsible, and do you think it's insidious?
Do you want me to answer the
Well,
question?
it's up to you, you're the chief, we have a question waiting over here, and we had a system here, it's up to you if you want to take that question.
Briefly, I think we are all, the police, the school system.
Do you take responsibility for
We
the
are all
8-to-1
complicit.
incarceration rate?
We
Yes
are
or
all
no?
complicit, but not singularly so. No, sir.
You're not responsible.
Not singularly so. No, sir.
Do you think it's insidious?
I do. I've said as much.
And what are you going to do different?
Yeah.
I don't think that I have to respond to you, Brendan, because I think I'm trying to follow some decorum here.
But I've been to 4 of these forums where you've been asked the same question and you've never answered it. What is going to be
I have
different?
been responsible. I'm sorry if it isn't the answer you want to hear. It is what it is, Brenda.
My name is Yolanda. I've spoken with you before, like last semester when you came to school, you were at the Red Gym, and we had a forum about it.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. I'm a student at UW, currently a senior, to graduate this May. And I want to talk to you, and I want to ask you what you think, or basically what you think can be done about not only police interactions with people who are possibly committing crimes or suspected of committing crimes, but the people who call the cops on people who are committing crimes. Because I feel like, when we look at the incidents that have happened around the country, when you look at Tamir Rice, when you look at John Crawford, those were people responding, officers responding to people's calls. And even in those calls, like there was like some uncertainty about like if the person's actually committing a crime, if the person's actually armed, and what are you doing to basically kind of basically walk into those situations still kind of thinking about the gaze that's looking upon the person that's supposedly committing this crime. Because I've had situations with because I've been going to the same 2 Walgreens on campus for 5 years. And I get racial profiled with the same man who's been working in there for like 5 years, and every time I come there, he follows me. I live by CVS Pharmacy. Anytime I go in there, I'm racial profiled by the same woman every day, even though she knows that I live in the community. And another Walgreens, the one that's on East Campus Mall, I had an incident in there where I bought a pair of headphones one night, and I didn't get the receipt for them. $10 headphones. I was just getting them to go to the gym, which was like right across the street. And I came back in and got in line after the man who was after me in line. And the clerk at the desk told me that I didn't pay for these headphones, that I had just paid for literally 2 minutes before. He said he didn't remember faces and that he didn't remember me. Embarrassed me in front of a whole store full of white people. I'm the only African American woman in there. And this white clerk and his white manager completely, basically discredited me in front of this room full of people. And now that situation was a situation where they almost called the cops. I had to plead with them so that they would remember me. I literally had just bought those pair of headphones 2 minutes before. Walked in, walked back out. Walked out, walked back in. And I just came to ask him if he could open it for me because I didn't have a pair of scissors. But he didn't believe that I bought it. And it's because I'm black, I guarantee. And I want to know, what are you doing? Because what are you as police officers doing to have a kind of a relationship with the people who you are protecting? Because somebody can feel threatened by me just being in a room with them, or me just walking in a store. That could give them reason to want to call the police. Now, what do you think about that, and what are you doing to be able to have these conversations with the people you're supposed to be protecting? Because I don't feel protected. I feel like the police are protecting people from me.
Congratulations on the graduation you made. Okay. Lots of good points. First of all, with respect to who is it that summons us, you're right. We are sort of victim to the prey of who calls 911 and how is that call vetted, how is it filtered, how is it understood that the caller may have a bias in and of itself that starts the wheels turning in the call for service. Of course, we can't, not being at the call taking standpoint, we can't impose our will. We'd certainly like to see that as part of their training where they're getting sort of that sense. And so a lot of times officers, of course, in training are saying, well, here is the call as it's dispatched. But be mindful, hopefully a good officer will make their own case based on articulable and objective facts once they arrive. But it can, as you've indicated, it can certainly taint the perspective before you ever get to the call because you're starting to process about what might be happening because you're trying to be, quite frankly, tactically proficient and safe and understand that one of your goals is to take and maintain control of that scene and then sort of sort it out. So, but your example in the pharmacy is actually profound because what you have done is actually said something that I've been trying to say and that actually the director of the FBI tried to say last week. Everybody has these implicit biases. Frankly, I think that the police department is one of the few that have articulated that elephant in the room and are providing training now understanding that. I only wish that that was mandatory training for all of us before we get out of high school or something like that. I completely agree, and I think that to your question, the frustration, I can't even begin to walk a mile in those shoes. All I know is that every class that I hire tends to come from across the United States. Very good spectrum. And on the first day I go through sort of an exercise the last couple of years where I say, okay, how many have been pulled over by the cop? Well, of course everybody has. And then we start to quantify it. Okay, less than 5 times in your life. Less than 10 times in your life. And you know where I'm going with this, right? So that by the time I'm getting into 15, 20, 25, 30, every hand that's still in the air are usually people of color. I can't dismiss that. I get it. And it is across the country, and I'm certain we're not immune here in Camelot. But we are trying to take those sort of affirmative steps that sort of identify that that's implicit, and we have to then act as guardians, not just of the community, but we have to be watchdogs of the sort of one another to ensure that that sort of bad behavior isn't reflecting the way we engage our folks. Thank you.
So we have 3 more questions, and then we'll have to take a look because we're past the 7:30 time, but we generally go beyond it anyway.
Thank you. My name's Nico Magallon. I'm a UW-Madison alum. I actually live on Olin Street, so this is geographically where I need to be. I'm lucky and privileged enough where I can leave my doors unlocked on Olin Street. But
Don't give an address.
Right. Right. But I know that isn't always the case here on the sunny side. So I've got 2 questions. One is kind of a more glass half empty, accounting for why we're here as a community, what has happened, and a more glass half full about the community that we need to foster to create those equitable outcomes. So, my first question is, what you've identified that there's a constellation, there's a whole mosaic of why there's a lack of equity here in Madison, especially for folks of color. And we've heard also the added caveat of personal responsibility and agency as a part of that as well. But just within the police prison that you all have control and ownership over, what types of policies and procedures do you think contribute to the 8-to-1 disparity? And then my second question, this is the glass half full part. Like Yolanda highlighted, back in September, you came to UW-Madison's campus and set up a very specific and direct relationship with students at that campus. And You tried, yep. And I'm doing work with students from around the state with United Council. And this weekend we're having a civic engagement opportunity where we'll be talking about, and we'll be doing this throughout the semester, giving civic engagement opportunities to K through 12 youth and higher education students as well to set up specific and direct partnerships with their campus and community police around the state, including right here in Madison. So as you wrap up this kind of phase in collecting community voice, what does specific and direct partnership look like with community members moving forward now?
Oh, that's great. What? Whoa! The question has been so tough that this is the Catholic Center, so God's giving me a sign.
He disappeared.
Everybody got their gun?
I really appreciate the question because as I look at the 6 sessions that we've tried to synthesize and get some sense of community sentiment and things, there have been some emergent themes that I've definitely been able to tap into, and that is people who at least say that we want you in the neighborhoods. I'm willing to say we have to look at the quality of the context that those neighborhood engagements look like. I think that's fair. I also, it hasn't come up here today, which is sort of surprising to me, but I've been amazed at how many people have voiced concern, very animated concern, about what role cameras will play with the Madison Police Department in the years to come. I guess that because I had seen the phenomena in so many other bigger markets across the country with everybody like going into a land grab, buying these things and creating cameras, I sort of expected that I would hear more of that because there would be a suggestion that with cameras, that we equate that with greater transparency and we want the cops to be transparent. But in going to one of the teach-ins actually that was they're not here, I would give them credit, but it was actually a debate, and on one side of the debate was the Young, Gifted, and Black Coalition, and we couldn't have been in more complete harmony and agreement because I agree with M when she says just because you have transparency, that doesn't mean you're going to have accountability. And I couldn't agree more with her because I think at the end of the day, this community is much more concerned with, at the end of the day, that we be accountable. The fact that we're recording cops behaving badly, that really doesn't get to the egg, to the crucible of what they're looking at, and that is we want our cops to be accountable, as do I. What I think what we do is that by me being here, and by the way, I don't travel with a road crew, these guys, you all volunteer to come here, so that's fine. I think I can take care of myself. But I think what the beauty of these sessions is that these officers are hearing too. Not through me sending an email or doing a videotape. They're hearing visceral, organic questions, comments, and criticisms, which they then in turn have to at some point start processing it. Am I part of this problem, or am I contributing to better, more qualitative, healthier engagement? I don't know how you couldn't be here and be in uniform and not feel sort of affected by the scrutiny and the difficult conversations that have occurred today. And so I think that therein lies the benefit in that I never thought that I would necessarily be able to achieve some measurables by having the forums, but it's infinitely important that we hear what those issues are, and it gives us sort of an understanding of where the community wants more activism on the part of the police.
The first part of his question was also what policies and procedures are a part of your department, that leads to 8-to-1 disparity, and I don't think you addressed that.
It was in our code of conduct is that we obviously have the same constitutional precepts that have been codified. So there's no racial profiling, equal protection of the laws, appropriate use of discretion. All of those things go to the core of what those policies are.
But the numbers don't reflect that, and I think that's what people are bringing up here tonight. But go ahead and answer this question.
Good evening, my name is Greg Spalding, and I live over on East Gorham Street.
Hi, Greg.
We've met before recently, and I do have a lot of respect for you doing these forums like this, and it gives me great hope and strength. I've worked a lot on the street with homeless people, addicts, alcoholics, and so I've had a lot of, and I've also had a liquor license for several years in the city of Madison. So I've had strange hours where I'm out and about, and so I witness a lot of things, and I've worked with a lot of police officers. And I stood shoulder to shoulder with, and I stood shoulder to shoulder with, police officers at the Capitol, and I've been arrested a lot up there and whatever. But I have witnessed some pretty awful things. I've witnessed some amazing things. I witnessed 2 young black men in a white neighborhood being antagonized by police officers, to the point where I thought that I was going to throw up. And for several days, I was just kind of wandering around, just thinking, this is my town. We were better than this, To the gentleman over here that said, we want police in our neighborhood. We do want police in our neighborhoods. We want police in our neighborhoods to protect and serve and to work with us. And also, like I said, I think this is tremendous that you're doing this, but I really think you blew it tonight. I walked in the door and I had to go through this thick blue wedge. I'm not gifted, I'm not young, and I'm not black, but I felt extremely intimidated by having all these officers at the door, and I just didn't quite understand that. And this is the first session that I've attended, and from what I've heard from a lot of people, that there's more police here than at the other ones. So I think that we're working toward, and I really do feel that you are taking the bull by the horns, as they say, and are doing some tremendous work, but some of the nuances I think really need to be worked on. So please continue to do what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Again, I guess this is one of those things where I would say that this has sent an unintended message that was not by design or on purpose, in the sense that when you're asking officers to be relational, I think they want to be greeters, they want to show some measure of hospitality, they want to show that it's a community meeting, they're part of the community, they want to hear firsthand what the issues, what the concerns are. But to the extent that that was off-putting for some, then I guess that we do have to sort of hit the reboot on that and see how we choreograph that so that people feel more invited.
Spread them out a little more. Because it was very intimidating for me, and I don't have any warrants.
I understand. Yeah, go ahead.
The disrespect. I just want to say something about officers present tonight, because it's been brought up a number of times, and I take full credit for that. I've been the captain down here in the South District for 7 years. Mike and I came on the department 32 years ago. And anybody that knows me, and there's a lot of people in this room, know that I'm all about our officers being very much hooked up with the people that live, work, and play in the South Madison area. And I preach that every single day with all the officers that work for us here, and a lot of them are here tonight. Our officers are out there working in those neighborhoods and working with everybody. I got officers here that come back on their own time. They're coaching kids in neighborhoods down here. They're doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, we truly try to be part of the community. So the reason the cops are here tonight is because I put the call out to them, and that's because these officers really wanted to come out and hear their boss speak to the community tonight. I think it's been a fantastic conversation. So that's the only reason why they're here, is because they love what they do, and they wanted to hear what you guys had to say tonight.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to follow up about the police presence as well. I've been to all the other forums except for one, and I understand maybe that people, that police would like to come out and show, their involvement with the community, but I think, there's some pretty basic psychological research out there that shows that if a ton of people in uniforms show up anywhere, that it creates a climate that is intimidating. Also, I wanted to talk about just some of these statistics versus personal experience. I mean, we all have our personal experiences, and I I don't know how many, straight white men know, whether or not, the history of policing in America, even against gay people, that didn't really let up until very recently. And in some places it's going backwards. Even, there's the Albuquerque Police Department that's been put on, on notice from the DOJ that it's completely out of hand racially and against the poor and such. There's Daryl Gates, there's Cole Connor. I mean, people know the history that's, still rather fresh in their minds. George Bernard Shaw, that preaching playwright, did say that, I'm going to paraphrase, that it takes an educated person to weep at statistics. And so I hope that people will just educate themselves more and maybe, go ahead and read things like the new Jim Crow or a novel like Invisible Man or anything like that, maybe just to get a better flavor for what the Black experience especially is. I guess one other thing quickly that I'd like to ask is just exactly what is the breakdown in the training? You talked about the 800 plus hours, but what does that consist of, generally speaking? Thank you.
Well, as I said, 520 hours of it is mandated by the state. It can be anything from professional communication, law, ethics, problem solving and community policing, defense and arrest tactics, firearms, emergency vehicle operation, things like that for 520 hours worth or so. And then beyond that, we can supplement it with trainings that we think are unique to Madison. So that's where we tend to do a lot more in terms of crisis intervention training and scenario-based, using mental health practitioners and things like that to go over a range of various behaviors that an officer could encounter and how would we talk those things through, things like that. I don't have it down to the grid with me, but...
the sort of hours, you wouldn't be able to say that it's like 50 hours.
Oh, I could not do justice to it, but you could email Captain Tom Snyder from the Madison Police Department, just T. Snyder, S-N-Y-D-E-R, and he can give you the breakdown, or his lieutenant can. It's all an open record in terms of our syllabus.
Quick compliment. I just wanted to say, being from Illinois, the restorative justice thing, I'm so glad to hear about that. I have the privilege of working with the Illinois Juvenile Justice Commission, and their commissioners have recently been really open to restorative justice, and we're seeing it not only work with petty crimes and low-hanging fruit, but we're seeing it really scale up to the point where restorative meetings like this even happen without police officers sometimes carrying guns or other things that can intimidate people. So I just want to say it's working, and in the Midwest, it's so important that we get it right. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thanks to the Catholic Multicultural Center for hosting us today.